Welcome to the KO Boxing Show. Haven't we got a special show tonight? None other than the widow of the great Tommy Morrison, former heavyweight world champion, the star of Rocky V, Trisha Morrison. Welcome to the KO Boxing Show.
Peter, finally, how are you?
No, great to have you on. We've been chatting for so many years, and I mean, I remember back in maybe, it would have been maybe 12, 11 years ago when we got Tommy on the SCN radio show, and Tommy was so excited. You mentioned how he set his alarm clock to get up, and we were going to launch a fight that he was going to do with Bob Mirovic in New Zealand at the time.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah, he wanted to stay up all night and so that he was ready for your interview, because I think it was like 6 o'clock in the morning US time. So he stayed up all night and then he fell asleep at 5. and so for the last hour he had to drink coffee and coffee and coffee, but he was so excited to talk to you. Yeah.
No, it was awesome. And what an awesome fellow. Let's go over his career. 52 wins, 52 fights, 48 wins, 42 by knockout. Defeated the great George Foreman to win a WBO World Heavyweight title. And, that just saying that, I mean, I've seen like the charisma he used to bring to the fights. There's never been anyone like Tommy. He's got hardcore fans, hasn't he? What was he like as a person to you? Obviously, he wasn't this, but you would have seen the softer side of Tommy as I did as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He had a great career. The side of Tommy that I saw, he was obviously not in boxing anymore, not in professional boxing. He'd been kicked out. He was actually very sober and sober-headed all the way through our relationship. He did drug rehab, and he loved to talk, and he loved to talk about everything that had happened in his life, all the way from the very beginning, Peter. About his amateur career, his boxing, his family life, just everything. He just wanted somebody just to sit and listen to him and figure out, what's happening. He got up every morning and it was like, why am I not dead? What's going on here?
Yeah, I also saw an interview, and I probably spoke to Tommy about this as well, when he filmed Rocky V with Sylvester Stallone. He went onto a big TV show, and the after parties where Madonna is going to be and people like that, and there was limousines with Stallone, and Tommy just said, look, I just want to go down the road and grab a steak and just do the normal thing. He was a country boy at heart as well, wasn't he? He didn't look for that, razzle dazzle type of thing.
Yeah, he was, he actually wrote a couple of paperback books here. I don't know if you can see them. And he does talk about his time in Rocky V, and that he was just a country boy. He was actually scared of being in California and Philadelphia doing the filming. But it turned out that he really wasn't acting. He was actually being himself in the movie Rocky V. Tommy Gunn was him. And as the years have gone on, and even through this lawsuit, what happened with Tommy Gunn, with the kind of Duke Don King character, is really, it was ahead of its time. It's really what happens to professional boxers.
Yeah, let's go over that moment. It's February 1996, and Tommy signed a big contract with Don King, and that was going to lead to the path of a $20 million US fight back, 26 years ago, probably like 50 million now, up against Mike Tyson, and he was going to fight Arthur Stormy Weathers. Now, he goes in there and gets a call up and goes to see Tony Holden, probably thinks his opponent's pulled out, and then gets the call, hey, guess what? The most 3 powerful words in the whole world at the time would have been HIV. You're positive. And he walks out thinking, I am, and there's all this press there, so he's been ambushed. How unfair would that have been for a 27-year-old man at the peak of his powers to face something as horrible as that when he's not HIV positive? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was actually February 10th, 1996 in Las Vegas. And you probably have seen ESPN 30 for 30. I think the whole world has seen that. The story on ESPN 30 for 30 is not exactly the true story. What he went through that day was was actually not right, not legally right either. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I found out since Tommy has died in the last 8 years about that day that you talk about.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go into now moving forward. How's it been for you, Trisha, with Tommy not there? The first few years must have been horrific, not having your husband and your soulmate. Have you moved on from that? Has it been really tough on you?
Uh, it's tough on everybody that loses somebody. I think I probably haven't had much time to think a lot about that. You know, when Tommy died, I promised that I would carry on, you know, with his fight, right? Fight to exonerate him. And that's what I've done, Peter. And I think you've seen that over the last 8, 9 years. All the stuff that's come out, you know, when Tommy died, and I don't know how you want to do this interview, but you know, I feel I need to show you some of the stuff that's gone on.
Yeah,
When Tommy died, I had them draw his blood, and they did a post-mortem, and the blood showed no HIV whatsoever. And even a year before he died, I had Boston, Massachusetts do a blood draw to find out, you know, if he had HIV. They found no HIV. So these are documents, not that I've made up, but that have been made by pathologists in the field of
yeah.
HIV, COVID, Ebola, AIDS. He had no HIV. They even photographed his blood, Peter. You know, here's blood with no HIV. That's Tommy's blood. Here's blood with HIV. It's right there. You know, I think, you know, then I started to think, you know, well, what happened in Vegas that day that you've just mentioned, February 10th? You know, why did the physician not tell Tommy himself? Well, it comes to find out that I've emailed the physician, and the physician's attorney emails me back saying, hey, I never diagnosed Tommy with HIV on February 10th, 1996. I've never diagnosed him with HIV or AIDS at all. So, you know, what you just said earlier just makes absolutely no sense why he's told that. So once I found out that the physician hadn't diagnosed him with HIV, that the post-mortem came back with no HIV, that the ante-mortem came back with no HIV, and that all the tests that I had done on Tommy a year before he died for AIDS, if you have HIV, you're going to get one of these diseases, you know, if you have AIDS, they all came back negative. So
Hmm.
once I had done the due diligence, you know, that's when I went straight into a lawsuit myself directly in Nevada, because I was literally told that I would never find an attorney in Vegas to go up against the Nevada Boxing Commission, right? And one of the biggest labs in the world, Quest Diagnostics. So my only option was to file the lawsuit, which I did.
Wow. And look, since when Tommy was diagnosed falsely with HIV in 96, it ruined Tommy's self-control and people around him, because people were panicking back then. There was no, you know, there was no clear knowledge of what was going on, and Tommy thought he had it. So it must have been a horrible time. But Tommy fought another 3 bouts in 12 years after that, and didn't retire till 12 years after that diagnosis. So there's no way you can have HIV and in 12 years' time be fit enough to be a professional boxer and win a last belt by knockout. It's impossible, because your body just wouldn't be able to, your immune system would not be able to put that up. I'm just stating
Yeah.
a fact that you cannot. So what happens now? Tony Holden was Tony's promoter and manager. Do you keep in touch with Tony? What's Tony got to say?
Tony Holden and I, we agree on our differences together. You know, I have met Tony Holden just a couple of times. I didn't know this, but the night on February 12th, Tony actually had his own contract with Don King. He was not Tommy's promoter. Did you know that?
No, no, he was
Right.
his manager at the time, was he?
No, He wasn't even his manager. Tommy was self-managed.
Okay.
He had fired John Brown a year before that, which, if you look at the timeline, is kind of interesting. So he fired John Brown. Bill Caton left at the end of his agreement. He did not want to renew because he didn't get on with John Brown, and that's a shame because Bill Caton was a really good guy. Tommy really, really loved him. But that night, and Tony Holden has admitted this to me, he had a contract with Don King that night, and Don King paid him $100,000 and said he wanted the complete rights of Tommy that
Okay.
night.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, Tommy's also got two sons, Trey and Kenzie, who box. Do you keep a keen interest in Trey and Kenzie?
I am fighting Tommy's fight, and yeah, I see stuff on both of them. Yeah, Kenzie is kept in contact all the way through, Tommy's situation, and he was always there for him, and Kenzie's always been there for me. He's a really good kid, very good kid. Yeah.
Great. You're in a mediation now with the Nevada and a lot of other parties. What are your lawyers saying? What happens here? Because you're a very educated woman, Trisha. And obviously the boxing game, it is a game, of high impact, and you get a lot of characters
Right.
and big characters in the sport. Um,
Yeah.
where's all this sitting? Because you're there for the whole 12 rounds. You're not going away. And
Yeah.
what they did to Tommy robbed him of, big money paydays. At the time, it would have been a psychological big, because
Right.
back then it was a death sentence just about. And he was copying all this. It would have been,
Yeah.
horrible for a 27-year-old man at the peak of his powers to have that put on him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think everybody's realized going through COVID what's happened. You've all been in lockdown. Can you imagine? This is exactly what happened with Tommy, right? He was in complete lockdown for all those years, not allowed to go into gyms. People didn't want to touch him. They didn't want to breathe the same air as him. It was devastating to him. And you're right, he was 26, just turned 27 when he got kicked out of boxing. And when you think of all the fights that he had, that was his life, right? They took away every opportunity that he could have to earn a living. And also it spilled over onto acting because nobody even then wanted to be near him or touch him or get involved with him. So he was completely isolated. And coming back to the lawsuit, I don't have an attorney. Like I said, nobody wanted to go up against the Nevada Commission. And I can honestly see why now, because in the 8 years, they have done nothing but lie under oath. And I have told them that. This is the lab report from 1996. Well, it's written out by a physician that never ordered the test. It has him listed as 99 years old, right? And the report was sent through to a doctor that Tommy didn't even know, and actually, I don't think even exists. Here is the signature that apparently he signed off on, Tommy, and that's not his signature. I actually had a forensic handwriting expert in this case. I have Tommy's signature right from the very first signature I could ever find from the 70s all the way through. So, people come to me and say, is this a real signature? I know. The State Athletic Commission, when you do a weigh-in, Peter, as you probably know, and remember, I've had to learn all the boxing stuff as well as the science, as well as the legal stuff. He went in for the weigh-in with Arthur Stormy Weathers, and everything was perfect. Their own physician signed off on him. So that was part of the lawsuit too. And something you probably don't know about is that Stormy Weathers actually produced a doctor's certificate to Don King on February 2nd and 5th, stating that he could not fight on February 10th. So,
Wow.
that hasn't been shown out in the media. And then something else you probably don't know about, exhibit TM0015, that is from the Nevada Commission themselves 10 years later on July 11th, 2006, lifting the suspension because of the medicals. Did you know that?
Yeah, no, I realised that because Tommy had 3 extra bouts after that diagnosis.
Right, but that's 2006, right? Then you've got Dr. Margaret Goodman, who comes out in the media in 2007 saying, because Tommy wanted to do his comeback. And what does she say? She says, Morrison's name resurfaced in the news recently when he said he was resuming his boxing career, just like he just said, and that he had been mistakenly diagnosed as HIV positive by the state of Nevada. And then she goes on to write, at that point, I contacted renowned Quest Diagnostics pathologist, Dr. John Hyatt. Dr. Hyatt has worked with the Nevada Commission for many years and was the physician who reviewed Morrison's original 1996 HIV results. At my request, Dr. Hyatt reviewed the archived results yet again. He says that they are ironclad and unequivocal. This, Peter, is 2007, just as Tommy is trying to do the comeback. Well, in this lawsuit, Dr. Margaret Goodman lied because Dr. Hyatt is neither a physician nor is he a pathologist. And in his affidavit, he states that he never looked at 1996 HIV results and never was the physician and never diagnosed Tommy. So just this getting out to the media then completely ruined any possible comeback whatsoever.
Wow.
Opponents didn't even want to touch him, right?
Let's go over Tommy, because at 13 years of age, he's winning tough man comps. At 17, 18, he's nearly making the Olympics. In Oklahoma, I spoke to Sean Gibbons and guys like that. He was like the real life Sylvester Stallone, movie star, golden boy, everything, the linebacker, the quarterback, the high school prom boy. He was like the leader, the captain of the college. He was like your all-star golden boy, and then gets this diagnosis, and it's like all this mud's been thrown on him, and his whole life just goes into a spiral of drugs and things like that, as you would, thinking I'm going to die, I better have a good time or whatever. And they ban him from the thing that he loves most, which is boxing. And the fans that all flock like seagulls all fly away and leave him on his own. It just must have been a horrible, horrible time for Tommy.
Yeah, it was, and we sat and we talked about it every day. He would mention it, Peter. Every day we were together, he would mention it. It's not something that then disappeared. And one thing that you need to look at, and the fans need to look at, is docket 140 that came out in this lawsuit. Guess what? The commission is saying they never suspended Tommy.
Wow.
Peter.
That's concerning.
It's concerning. In docket 140, a former FBI, the guy that runs the Nevada Commission, Bob Bennett, please have him on your show, right?
We'll get Bob on. We'll track Bob down.
Track Bob down, get him on your show and say, Bob, what are you talking about? Your docket 140, you've now said that you never suspended Tommy Morrison from boxing. What do you mean? The whole world knows he got suspended. And then in another docket, the commission are saying, well, there never was a diagnosis of HIV. Did you know that?
Yeah, so what happens there? Obviously, there's a mediation. When does the mediation take place?
Well, after 8 years of going backwards and forwards and pulling up new information, even, for example, they were saying there never was a contract with Don King, right? And so I've had to pull up and find the contract with Don King and file it in court. And then they're saying that, well, okay, so there was no diagnosis of HIV, they were saying, right? And then Bob Bennett says, well, we never suspended Tommy from boxing anyway, all right? And then they're saying, well, the reason why he got denied a license is because he violated a Nevada state athletic rule, which was NAC 467.027 section 3B, all right? Now, and again, I know nothing about boxing, Peter, But one night, a couple of years ago, I'm thinking, I just wonder about that rule. They keep saying that he violated it. Not once they said it throughout the whole lawsuit. They said it 138 times that he violated that rule, and that's why he didn't get a license. So here you have a sealed document. And again, I don't know if you can see that. It's got a seal and it's got a tape. That comes from the legislator in Nevada, and it confirms that that rule did not exist on February 10th, 1996. Minutes of the meeting are here as well. And that confirms that Mark Ratner, who delivered the so-called diagnosis to Tony Holden, which is not a diagnosis anymore, was in the minutes of the meeting in 1997, making NAC 467.027 Section 3B law. You're talking about over a year later. They knew that what they were saying in the lawsuit was not right, let alone what was happening on February 10th. So anyway, that came up in the lawsuits, and now we're at the mediation point. I am excited. I've also filed a piece of biological evidence has been found at one of the last facilities that I have said to them, okay, I want you to do DNA HIV testing, because you got out to the world that Tommy had HIV. When he died, he did not have HIV. The postmortem antemortem says he has no HIV. Now we have a piece of biological evidence for you to test to prove me wrong and to prove yourself right. Anyway, they declined to do that. All right. Okay. So I took it to the Ninth Circuit Court. The Ninth Circuit Court has the appeal now waiting on the docket. And then when they put that on the docket, my appeal, the next day came out another docket on the record ordering us to go to mediation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on a positive now, Trisha, because Tommy was such a larger than life character and he was so soulful. I remember when we used to all chat, remember, I'd basically talk about Elvis Presley. He was a big Elvis Presley fan, and I'm a big Elvis Presley fan, so I'm showing my age, obviously, but but Tommy loved TCB and taking care of business. So what are some of the warm feelings you've got? What's a typical day with you and Tommy? Was he early morning person, late night person, or was just whatever suited? Was he junk food?
No, not at all. No junk food. You got to remember, he was a professional athlete, and he kept that in his mind every single day. He read his Bible 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening. He worked out every single day. He kept to it. He did, cardio and leg work. He opened up a gym, for the kids on the streets in one of the worst areas in Wichita, and trained them for free. And then I started to get him involved a lot more in boxing, because he didn't even want to see boxing anymore. He didn't want to get involved in the professional part because he wanted to be in the ring, Peter. And every time he tried to apply for a license, they would say, no, you have HIV, you got suspended, you got diagnosed with HIV in 1996. We don't want to touch you. So anything that came out on him was bad, bad media. Negative media, yeah.
What was Tommy related to John Wayne, the actor?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and I posted some stuff on Facebook. He was the great grandnephew of John Wayne. Yeah,
one of the most famous cowboy actors you'd ever want to meet. But Tommy, when I saw Tommy act, and I've seen him in a few different parts, he had a lot of talent as an actor as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And he wanted to get back into acting. He actually had an opportunity to get back in. John Gotti Jr. had contacted him and wanted him to be in one of the movies about his father. But that never happened, unfortunately.
So what's a funny story? As you know, you pre-told me that I always ask for
Yeah,
the funny story, so you've got that ready. What's your funny
I've got it
story about
ready.
Tommy?
Okay, well, it's and I did write it down because I've watched your podcast a lot, right? And I've seen who you've interviewed. So I'm honored to be on your show, Peter, because I know that the commission are going to be watching this,
Yeah.
right? All right. So Tommy opened up a gym in Wichita, Kansas, right? And he invited Leon Spinks, right? And his
Wow.
wife Brenda was there, and Ernie Shavers and Ray Mercer. And the mayor of Wichita got them tuxedos, right? So that was kind of fun. You know, you would hear in one hotel room all these four heavyweights, right, just laughing and giggling, helping each other, putting on the ties and everything. But the morning that the gym was open, Leon had cut himself. He
Oh,
had cut it, but he cut himself shaving, right? So, you know, this is Leon Spinks, right? You
yeah.
know, one of the best boxers in the world. And all the others are trying to find him a band-aid, right?
Wow.
So the hotel had a band-aid, and you've got Leon Spinks standing in the ring talking to all these kids, and you've got Ray Mercer listening to Leon, and you've got Tommy listening, and Ernie Shaver standing there because he was always, you know, the one that was always the proper, you know,
Yeah.
heavyweight. And you got Leon Spinks with a huge bandage on his chin.
Wow.
Out of all the times he's been cut, there he is with a bandage. I mean, it was hysterical. Just another quick story. Jerry Cooney interviewed Tommy once, and he mentioned to Tommy about women weakened knees, right?
Yeah.
And so when he said that to Tommy, Tommy looked around to me. We were sitting in the car while he was doing the interview, and I kind of like, what does that mean? And Tommy kind of rolled his eyes and said, I'll tell you later. Um, and then Jerry Cooney would say to Tommy, you know, forget about this HIV thing, get over it, Tommy. Turn the page, Tommy. And that really upset Tommy, because you can't just turn the page when you've been told that you're going to die, right?
Yep.
And so from that interview onwards, for the next 5 years, literally, Peter, every time something came up, he'd look at Tommy would look at me and go, turn the page, Jerry, turn the page. In other words, you know, this is no big deal, right? So
Yeah.
that was one of his sayings, yeah. But I've got a whole bunch of other stories too. I'll tell you those one day.
Yeah. No, well, give us another one. Can you give one more, please?
All right, one more. Okay, so you know, you remember the fight with Mercer, right?
Yep.
I think everybody does, where he gets bashed on the head and gets knocked out. Well, we had a Jeep, and at the back of the car wouldn't always stay open, right? You had to hold it. So there was one day Tommy was getting his gym bag out of the back of the car, and it fell on his head. The hood, or whatever it is, the trunk,
Yeah.
fell on his head, and he went, ouch. Right? And I looked at him, I said, how can you say ouch over something simple as that? And he laughed, and I said, you know, I've seen you take worse hits to your head, and you're saying ouch because that fell on your head. And he started laughing. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, one thing as people, we've got to realize, you know, boxers, you see them in the ring, they're gladiators, but they are human beings and they hurt like
Yeah.
everyone else. They're very sensitive people. Um, what's
Yeah.
the, with Tommy, apparently when he passed away, he was cremated and there was bits of Tommy put in little things that were made as necklaces, or is that what eventually happened with Tommy's
Right.
ashes?
Okay, yeah, there was a big deal again on the media, and I think it was really meant to do a character assassination on me, right? When Tommy died, he was cremated, and I gave some ashes to his mother, right? And his mother has buried those ashes in a grave in Arkansas, right? But what Tommy really wanted done with his ashes is, being an Elvis fan, he had a TCB necklace That was Elvis's necklace, right?
Yeah.
Then Sly Stallone gave him a DTA, Don't Trust Anyone necklace, DTA
Okay.
necklace,
Yeah.
right? So Tommy wanted his boxing glove necklaces to say DWI, deal with it, right? So that's what he wanted his ashes to be put into, little boxing glove necklaces, and for me to give them out to people that really were his friends, really have stood by him through good and bad times. And I have one reserved for you, Peter.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to get it.
Yeah, and so that's what I still have to do. When this lawsuit is all said and done, then that's my next thing, is to get the ashes professionally put into those gloves and given out to the people that really have been, the best people in his life and in his death. I was accused about a year ago. Somebody posted on Facebook that I had sold Tommy's ashes on eBay, right? I mean, just outrageous stuff that comes out. So I contacted eBay and I said, hey, I've been accused of selling Tommy's ashes on eBay. And I got a response about 3 months later, and they checked every single eBay account. They've noticed that I've never ever eBayed anything ever of Tommy's or anything. And they came back with a letter from their legal department saying, no, you definitely have not sold any of Tommy's ashes. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
So, stuff like
Cruel
that happens,
people.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Cruel people, Trisha. It's just sometimes the world we live in, and you'll
Yeah.
get cruel people like that, and you don't take any notice. And we could see those proud belts and the way you
Yeah.
set things up, and the fight that
Yeah.
you've done for Tommy. I'm sure he's looking down with a smile, and he knows you're the true fighter because you haven't
Right.
given up. And I'm sure at the end of all this, you'll get what everyone deserves, and you deserve, and big time what's happened with Tommy, and you've had to live with him, and obviously you want to see, the wrong become a right finally. And I'm sure when the mediation comes around, you will, find some type of, let's just say, medium ground where it can't replace all the hurt that Tommy went through, but a medium ground where you can at least feel relieved and say, well, that was the last round now, that we can get on with it. Things have been set.
Yeah, I hope so. I think this fight is a 15-rounder, Peter. But I honestly believe we're there. With the mediation, again, this has just been put onto the docket in court. So I can't talk about it at all, right? Just know that it's out there, and let's see and pray, and hope that everything goes through okay.
Trisha Morrison, a true fighter, and
Yeah.
thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and sharing these memories. And I'm sure we'll have you back, and I'll try and track down Bob as well, to Bob Bennett, the former
That would be
FBI
good.
agent. Yeah.
Hey, have them all on there.
Hey, I'd like to hear Bob's best story as well. Okay, Trish. You take care. Enjoy your day. God bless, and thank you for your time.
All right. Well, thank you, Australia. I appreciate it. Bye, Peter.
Thank you, Trish.